Good evening. My name is Arlene Miller, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Our Town. This is a little bit of a different format than we usually do on Our Town, and it's because there's a special event coming up on June 9th, and that is it's the annual town election. This year we have two groups that have actual choices to be made. There are empty seats both on this. There are four candidates. Let me back up. There are four candidates running for the select board, and we will elect two people to the select board. There are three candidates running for two seats on the school committee. So it's my goal in this sequence of shows that will be coming up to introduce to you each of those seven candidates. We're going to begin this segment with Richard Foster, who conveniently is the chairman of the select board, an incumbent, and a candidate for re-election. So I'm not going to, each candidate I will introduce, and then hopefully you will get to meet the candidates through this forum. So let's start with Richard. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for doing this. Again, it's my goal to be able to show the candidates to you, the voters, and have them be able to express why they're running, what they're about, what their positions are on certain issues that we may talk about. It's going to be casual, but maybe a little prickly if we get there, but I don't know that we'll get there. So first of all, let's just back up. I know you are an incumbent and you're the current chair, but there are voters out there that don't know you at all, and that don't know how long you've been in Long Meadow, why you ran. So why don't you start with sort of a little bio of who you are?
A real close or quick encapsulation of me?
Sure.
Well, I retired from the federal government, and my son lived in Long Meadow at that time, and I moved up here officially about 7 years ago. We bought a home about a year in advance of moving. This was a destination spot. I'm recent to the area, but my family originated from this area. I think I mentioned some of my literature. I go back to the Mayflower. I have eight generations of my family are buried in the Enfield Cemetery. So my family, my ancestors actually settled most of the area. I have statues downtown of my grandfathers and everything else. So it was an odd homecoming.
Great.
My involvement in the town since I got here is I joined capital planning the first month I got here. And I spent 3 years on capital planning. In the last 2 years, I was the chair. And then I was approached at running for the select board, and I thought it over, and I felt that after being on Capitol, I could see that I could likely do more for the passions that I had for infrastructure and renewal efforts to be on the select board than on the capital planning. So I could be on there and make a decision, and also be able to reach out to the capital planning and still continue with some of the feelings that I wanted to pursue.
So how many years have you been on the select board?
This will be my third year.
Okay. Now, we had a conversation some years ago, and you said you weren't going to run again. What changed?
That's true, I did. I said I was a one-term candidate, and at that point I felt I would be. I sincerely felt. The more you peel back the onion, the more you become aware of some of the needs that need to be taken care of in our community. And I don't mean immediate needs, I'm talking long-range needs. My profession in facility management and personnel management, I dealt with long-range planning exclusively. Including day-to-day, but in my position, I was usually well ahead of the workforce. I was a year or two ahead of the workforce because I had staff doing the day-to-day. So I'm very familiar with long-range planning, and I started sensing on Capitol that was a lot of pieces of the puzzle that weren't fitting together. We have a town that stopped building in the early 70s, so at a minimum, most of the newest infrastructure we have in underground is 50-some plus years old. And when I looked overall, I didn't see a lot of concerted effort into the renewal process. I saw daily activities being cared for, but the in-depth renewal, which is the hard one to do when you start rebuilding a community. Since that point in the last year, we've implemented a change to our capital policy where we put another 0.5% into the policy.
So why don't you back up on that? So how much do we dedicate out of our?
It was 2%.
Okay.
Now we've gone to
of the property tax.
Of the property tax, that's correct. And we went to 2.5, and then we put a clause in. It's a policy only that will increase at about 0.25% per year. The intent being is we slowly, very slowly, build the fund up so we can adapt to spending more money and doing better research and getting projects ready. And once we can hit what we consider the top of the bell curve and start to get just ahead of our infrastructure decay, then we can settle back on that policy. But what we must do is leave that money alone.
So is it fair to say that, and I felt this way when I first interviewed you 3 years ago, that you had have a passion for infrastructure and for public works.
Yes, I've dealt with that most of my professional career, and I like personnel management. I had a large workforce I dealt with, but I was on the federal side, so I'm usually a little bit more regulation-oriented than you would find in smaller communities. I had reams of paper to go for guidance, and it was never a guess. It was I know exactly what's going to be done the next step.
So 3 years, you've just said something that you've proposed and you're working on. Is there anything else that you feel is important that's before the board now that you're particularly interested in?
I think the most important issue, well, I know the most important issue that we have facing us is growth in our tax base. We are sitting at, the magic limit on our tax base is $25 by law per $1,000 evaluation of property.
This is because of the limitations imposed on us by Proposition 2.5.
That's true. And the max limit is $25. Right now, we are sitting at about $21.91 per thousand. And the 2008 housing market, when it started slipping back, did not help us in this, because what it did, it took the property values down, and without us readjusting our workforces or getting rid of people or cutting programs, we actually had to increase the taxes to keep up with our actual growth. And
our infrastructure.
And our infrastructure.
Yes.
And right now, we're sitting, we could possibly hit our max in about 5 years. We don't think it's going to happen, but it's time for the discussion to be put on the front burner.
Do you have a solution?
Yes, there's about 5 different solutions, but none of them are going to be easy. In total honesty, once we hit the $25 limit, we only have one choice.
Override.
No, once you hit that, you can't do an override.
You can't do an override. Okay, so what is the choice?
You are talking about reduction of services, and that's likely what will happen, reducing services or expanding somehow your base in your town. In other words, doing more construction, doing developments of some sort.
Yeah, business.
Maybe not the business, because right now we're only 4% business in our community, and we're 96% residential. Right. And although that's a wonderful environment to live in, it's a terrible thing on your tax base.
So we're not going to solve that problem tonight, but this is
No.
something that you have on your radar and that you want to participate in the decision making about.
We introduced it about 4 or 5 meetings ago as a forum. We went before the public, and I've turned it over to the town manager now. Since it's not going to be a select board, the town manager is starting to assemble a task force to bring in realtors to start to get trend analysis on our community. We also brought in Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and I can share with you, they're thrilled. They apparently were, for some reason, not aware of the $25 limit, so it's opened up a whole new spectrum for their services to provide for communities.
Sure, sure. Let me ask you, you talked about the town manager. Let me ask you a little bit about the charter. It's often, I hear a lot of chit-chat among your board members at your meetings often about the charter. I have a sense you've probably read it.
Several times.
What's your sense about the charter? Is it a workable document? Has it got some flaws? Is it?
Well, I think I could never say there's not something wrong with every document. There's always something that can be modified, because as you change and the years go by, we put the charter in 10 years ago.
Really? Has it been that long?
Yeah, it could use a review. I'm not sure it needs to be changed, but it could use a review. We've experimented, and we're still experimenting with the town manager, the strong town manager concept, because as you well know, as being an ex-selectman, they used to have 3 selectmen and you had a town administrator. And where the selectmen at that point were much more influential on the operation of the town. Now the board is 5 members, and we have what they call a strong town manager. And we are now in a policy role. And I think that's been a difficult adjustment for many people to accept the executive policy role.
And how do you feel about that?
I embrace it because I like forms and procedures and make things work. And I say, in other words, if I want the town manager to do something, and I do not have the direct authority to tell him to do that as a supervisor, then by the executive charter, I write a policy that sets up what he will do. And then I hold him accountable for policy. We move away from personalities, and we move into more of this is a policy and what's your performance at the end of the year in accordance with the policy. So I support it.
Okay. Do you feel like you're a good team player on the board?
Sometimes I am. What can I say? I mean, sometimes you are and sometimes you aren't. I try to be. I really do try to be. But when I run into people that absolutely are bent at turning something sour, I can bristle up a little bit. This weekend down at the at a Long Meadow show, I heard a repeated comment that I'm a voice of reason and calm, and I told my wife when I got home, I said, they really don't know me, because I've never been accused of being that.
I mean, it's been said, I've heard a lot of comments around town that your board is mean to each other, they argue a lot. How would you respond to that?
Yes. We do have some internal problems on the board.
And what are you doing? What are you doing to rectify that?
What I've done this last year is I have tried to bring a little bit more of order and decorum to the board. I've allowed people to speak, sometimes more than I maybe should have, but I've also cut some people short when they started venturing off topic. I've tried to respect their feelings and have them respect mine, and also respect the town manager and their charter.
Well, thank you for those comments. Tell me what you feel about the, if you would, the proposal, the last article, was it the last article? I believe it was, on the town warrant, the annual meeting warrant about the senior center. I'm sure you're familiar with it. There was money allocated to review the current site, expansion, separate, different locations to house the senior center. Do you have an opinion on this?
I support the amendment. I've supported it both times it's been brought up.
What about the location? Do you have opinion on the location?
No, because it's being studied right now. Of course, I have an envisionment, but I'm not sure that it'll ever happen. I see land in our community that could be developed for a senior center, a senior community, and just add a robust feature to our community.
Where would that be?
Right now, I would look at Turner Park to research it out totally. I'd like to see somebody come in, and a developer come in and tell us what could be done and what are our options. Now, the senior community, the current facility was really a converted elementary school.
Sure.
And there was very little done to it, to that conversion. I mean, the bathrooms are still set for kindergarten children. So for somebody to say everything is rosy over there, it's wrong. It
needs work.
It needs work. It needs a
I don't
lot
think
of
there's
work.
any debate about that.
Right. And the seniors in 2020, 27% of our population will be 60 years and older in our community. So we have a sizable population that we should accommodate.
So in a year, we should have some information?
It would be less than that.
The study will be quicker?
Yeah, the study will be quicker. They have a couple of sites they're going to evaluate. And one, of course, is Greenwood on the evaluation.
Yes, I think it's two sites. I think it's
Right.
Turner Park and Greenwood. But the first study said supported supported Greenwood.
The first one had, but the worst part about it, the scores were like, you couldn't distinguish them. There was only 25 points, and it was like 24 and 25.
Okay.
It was so close that we should have added many more variables to that, but unfortunately we didn't. But what did come of the study was the fact of what the deficiencies are at the current center, based on what our future needs are going to be.
How about the budget and the budget process? Were you pleased with the budget process this year? And if not, what would you do differently?
I thought the budget process went very well this year. I think there was a lot more cooperation, early cooperation with the schools. You know, we brought back the finance subcommittee on the select board, and we brought back an operational subcommittee, which had been shut down by the previous chairs, and we brought that back on because I believe in committees. I think they're a very valuable function. Let committee and committee work out the details and then bring it to the electorate. This year, I think it worked very well. It could work better even next year. I think we need to have a much more cooperative relationship with our schools. This is our town, and we need to join as a team. I've spent a lot of time talking with Janet Robinson this year. I'm one-on-one about this issue. I'm not saying healing the departments, but let's reevaluate and look at how we look at our roles and bring us closer together. I want to meet four times next year. I would love to meet at least 4
I've
times.
felt that the relationship between the boards has been much more copacetic over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, historically, it's been very different.
And it needs to stop.
Well, no, I think it's gotten better.
Oh yeah,
That's
but
what I'm
I
saying.
mean,
Yeah.
the split boards needs to stop.
Right. Well, yes. Good. I think everybody working together on the high school has brought some coalition together. So what do you think? So going forward, you've mentioned the tax base and the revenue, and that is. Other than that, is there something big on your plate that you think is of concern to the community that you want to wrestle with if you are reelected?
Oh, of course. I want to keep pushing forward on the infrastructure and at least planning, not so much doing, but planning. Arlene, I think the main thing is get the information out and make everyone aware of how many problems we have down the road. Just how big is the puzzle? And it's a large puzzle. You've heard me tout the figure of $400 million. That's a lot of money, but when you rebuild an entire town infrastructure the way eventually we're going to have to do, it's going to take a lot of money.
I think it's fair to say since you've been on the board, there's been a lot more emphasis on infrastructure.
I would think there has been.
Yeah, and a lot of money's been borrowed.
No,
to do
not
the
so much
project.
borrowed. No, and the borrowing's taken place in enterprise funds, but not,
That's what I mean, in
oh,
enterprise
yeah,
funds.
yeah,
But we've been using the good low interest rate
absolutely.
to, you maximize on
Right.
that to do some infrastructure work.
And they're starting to do some quality, well, they were doing quality before, but we have stepped up considerably on our repair
You look at the
programs.
warrant, my first look at the warrant this year, I said infrastructure, infrastructure,
Right.
infrastructure. So, I mean, I think a lot of that's starting to be addressed. But
It is.
many communities are in the same boat.
They are. This wave is going across the country.
What's your feeling about regional, working with our neighbors and on issues and problems? And does your board meet with other select boards?
We don't, we meet infrequently. They usually have a regional select board meeting, but I think it's like once a year. I likely support regionalization more than most people because in the government, I had to use collaborative activities. I could not stand alone. I had to collaborate with other parks and other areas and other divisions. So I'm more used to going to a table and working out things on a more global or a regional type plan. There are some things that we may not be able to regionalize, but the savings are definitely there.
Sure, well, we do a regional hazardous waste event. I know that saves
That's
us
right.
a lot of money by doing it. We couldn't
Yeah.
do it.
I would
couldn't do it.
like to see us put more energy into exploring regionalization.
If you were speaking in a forum and you had something really last minute you want to say to the public, what would be your message to them? Why should we vote for you over the other three candidates?
It's a very good question. I'd say look at what I've done, look at my voting record, look at the articles I've written, what I've stood for, talk to your neighbors. There's opinions all over. I come from a public service aspect. I was in public service all my life, so I understand the role of a public servant. I understand that I'm here to serve the community. I'm not here to serve myself. I don't take anything back from this. I try to give. I try to bring my expertise in, and sometimes I'm a little more forceful than I need to be, but I sense the fact that there's a lot of things that need to be done, and it's time to start institutionalizing this thought process. So I'm a process-oriented individual. I like to put something in and allow it to work.
So how do you feel when you don't get your way on the board?
I just go back and redraft and come back after it.
So you don't just go with the flow?
No, well, it depends. You can go with the flow as long as it's okay for the community. If it's something that is really steaming hot, the old expression you used to use in the federal government, if it affects me for 1 year, I'm not too concerned. If it's 5 years, I get more concerned. If it's 10 years, I'm very concerned. If it's 20, I'm fighting.
But is it your way, the highway, or
No.
I mean, is it?
No,
I mean,
it's just that I'm persistent.
I get that, but you told me earlier you were a team player.
Well, I am
Now
a team
you're-
player, but I'm persistent in my thirst to get things done. Now, I likely have more expertise in facility management than any other board member. Okay, with my years
not
of
making a
experience.
judgment, yeah.
So I'm passionate on bringing that forward. Now, if the future generations don't do it, that's one thing, but I feel remiss if I at least don't bring it forward.
But if you're outvoted on something, then what do you do?
You're outvoting,
Okay.
period. Clear and simple. 3 votes passes and the 2 go away. There's nothing you can
And then
do.
do you redirect, or you
It
just keep?
depends on the issue. 98% of the time, the issue is resolved. That the fact is, and you were a selectman, you know exactly what I'm talking about. To bring an issue back before the board repeatedly is counterproductive. We're talking about if my passion is for facility management, am I going to let one defeat stop me from that passion? No. Would that one item? Yes. But I won't give up on the overall passion of bringing our town into programmatic efforts.
What's your sense about our open space and the value of that in the community?
It's a wonderful, we have a phenomenal amount of open space. I think there's times when we have open space that's just sitting there open that might be able to be
That's the point,
used.
open space, yeah.
Well, it is, but open recreation space and just open space are 2 different items. Sometimes you have open space that's sitting there and nobody can tell you why it's open space. And there can be adaptive uses of space and still remain fairly open. As you well know, there's a lot of things we can do with land.
I mean, I think that's one of the benefits of our community is that we have the diversity and some of this wonderful open
Right.
open
Well, we have
open
the
space.
largest green in the United States.
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know that data, but that's great. Well, I've enjoyed speaking with you, and I wish you luck on your campaign. I think with the community, it's important that all 4 candidates get before the public and that the public have a good sense of who they're voting for. Your position, you are the chief elected officials in this community. You're key to our government running well. You're key to our, I should not stop this before asking you. My goodness, there are 3 major positions department head positions that are going to be vacant.
Right.
What's your sense of how we should go about replacing those positions?
The recruitment activities are already underway.
So just to explain who they
Yeah,
are.
Stephen has gone out for a professional recruitment firm for our fire department.
Stephen being the town manager.
Stephen, the town manager. He also is considering the same thing for the police department, and he has put out a vacancy announcement. I forget how wide, it was fairly wide for our director of public works.
Yeah, so 3 key department heads.
It's going to be a challenging
So
year.
this select board would have influence, even though by the charter, the town manager has the authority to hire and fire the department heads, but hopefully.
We approved the division chiefs.
Right.
Right. But he's in charge of the hiring, the entire process, and so far I think he's right on track. He's got the wheels turning right now.
Good. That's a big assignment for the next.
It's a phenomenal challenge for any town to go through 3 of them this quickly.
3 of that nature. That's
Right.
absolutely.
There's going to be a tremendous burden placed on the town manager's office for the adjustment of these 3 people in the next couple of years. It's going to take a couple of years for them to settle in, except possibly for the fire and all that, because they just basically come in as another fire department. There's a lot of regulations to cover that.
So you excited about that process, or are you
Oh
angst about
yeah,
it?
I think it's a great opportunity. And we're losing some really great people also. But it's what's happening. It's the baby boomers are retiring, and it's an opportunity for the next generation to step up and take their chances to play. I think it's a beautiful opportunity for us. So we've got a young town manager. We've got a town manager that lives in our community. We always wanted that, and we've got one that's committed. He has young children. He's committed to our community, and he's going to be building his team. And I think the opportunities are phenomenal that could take place with this. And I think he needs the support of the select board in this venture, because I think this is a very pivotal thing that's going to take place in our community.
So Richard, we've spoken for quite a few minutes about different things that you've been passionate about since you've been on the select board. We've talked about your feelings about infrastructure and the concern about reaching the cap on our taxes, the maximum amount we can tax, and the issues and the challenges to deal with hiring 3 new department heads. So you served the town for 3 years. You're looking forward to serving 3 more years. And I guess I just want to say thank you for taking the time to express your feelings to our listeners. And to the listeners, I want to remind them that on June 9th is the election,
Right.
from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. And that I'm going to thank Richard one more time before we cut this segment, and then watch again, please, for 3 more selectman candidates to be interviewed, as well as 3 school committee candidates to be interviewed.
Yeah. The only one thing I wanted to add, it sounded like the sky was falling when we were talking about the tax rate.
I mean, not to me, it didn't.
And
but
it's not falling, but the clouds are forming. I think that's it.
It's an issue to have on the horizon,
Right.
and to keep.
We need to put it on the horizon and start watching it.
Yeah, great.
I just want to leave everybody with that impression that we're not packing up and leaving tomorrow, but
And there will be solutions.
there will be solutions.
Terrific. Well, thank you to our listeners, and thank you to you.
And thank you for the public service.
I want to say good evening.